Hola, bienvenidos a todos. Mi nombre es Rosa Vasquez Espinoza y soy bióloga química. Bienvenidos a welcome everyone. My name is Rosa Vasquez Espinoza and I'm a chemical biologist. Welcome to this webinar to celebrate World Space Week in HITN. We want to welcome everyone who is joining today, and especially the schools from Puerto Rico. We know that a lot of the students are in science or are interested in science, but we're also welcoming and thanking Puerto Rico Science Trust for being here with us today. I also want to encourage everyone to please send your questions via chat. We want to get everyone involved in this conversation today with the great guests and speakers that we have. And also feel free to ask your questions in Spanish. Go ahead, any curiosity that you have, we will make sure we answer it here today. I want to share with you that today and this entire week, we're celebrating science and technology, and World Space Week celebrates every year between the 4th and 10th of October in almost 100 countries. The idea is that there are a lot of events to share about space and space education, and these events are organized by space agencies, space companies, schools, planetaries, museums, astronomy clubs, everything happening at the same time to get everyone talking and excited about space. This 2022, the chosen topic is space and sustainability. The biggest mission that NASA has today is called Artemis. You may have seen it out there yet, but if not, would you want to learn more? Artemis Mission is to get to the moon. And today's first guest is Antonia Jaramillo, a Colombian who is one of the members of the communication team that keeps up to date with all of the news about the Artemis mission. Welcome, Tony. Thank you for being with us here today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thank you for making the time. We're so excited to talk to you. Everybody, I'm sure, has so many questions for you, but I'll start with the $1,000,000 question that I think everybody's wondering about. Can you tell us, when is Artemis finally launching?
So that is the big $1,000,000 question that actually one of our other speakers, Lili, can also help answer. So right now, we have the Artemis 1 moon rocket. It's our mega moon rocket that is getting ready to launch for its first mission. It'll be an uncrewed capsule, so we won't be having any astronauts on board, but it will be the precursor to when we do send humans back to the moon. This first mission, it's fully stacked. It's currently inside the vehicle assembly building. We actually just had to roll back in there last week to make sure that we were safe from Hurricane Ian that, came to Florida. So right now teams, actually the team that Lili works on, and so she'll be able to talk about that more. They're right now just, making sure that that the rocket is all in a safe configuration, that everything is good, ready to go, doing some final, checks before we're ready to roll back out to the launch pad and then, of course, launch. So we're looking at November as that next opportunity to launch this amazing mission that I really encourage everyone to follow, which you can do on all of our NASA social media accounts, whether it's the NASA account, the NASA Kennedy, NASA en Español, we'll be having an English launch live broadcast and also a Spanish one. So please tune in.
That is so exciting. So, okay, everyone, stay tuned for a November potential launch, assuming all the conditions are correct, right? And tell us more, because I saw this video about Snoopy, and I don't know how true it is. Is Snoopy really going to space?
So that's a great question. So we do have a SpaceX agreement with Peanut, which Snoopy is one of the characters. Snoopy actually has always been really integral with the with NASA over the past years, and so on every mission, especially missions where we send astronauts to space, as I'm sure maybe you have seen in our SpaceX Crew Dragon missions to the International Space Stations, there's always a little toy that's also inside the space capsule to basically serve as what's called a zero gravity indicator. So essentially, it is there to alert folks when microgravity has been reached. So it's kind of floating and bobbing around in the capsule. So for Artemis 1, that's going to be Snoopy. Snoopy will
Well,
be our zero G indicator.
I didn't know that. That's super interesting. I thought that maybe it was just like a nice addition, everybody, like a reminder of something fun. So that's really cool. And can you please tell us more about how did you first come to work at NASA and what exactly do you do?
Absolutely. So I have always, had a big fascination for space. I mean, space science, astronomy, the Apollo missions have always, impacted me and have always been such an inspiration. Never in a million years did I think I'd ever get to work at NASA, but nevertheless, it was always an amazing idea and concept. And so I went to school to study journalism, and after I graduated, I was actually a space reporter for Florida Today, which is part of the USA Today network. It's based out here in Florida on the Space Coast, and I had the opportunity to get to cover, all the NASA launches that are launching here from Kennedy Space Center, and that just kind of helped me, get closer to the possibility of getting closer to NASA. And so when one of the communication positions at NASA's Kennedy Space Center opened up, I jumped at that opportunity, and I was very, very lucky to be given, the opportunity, the chance to get to work here at NASA. And so I'm part of the Office of Communications at NASA, and basically our whole goal, our whole job is to help share NASA's story. So everything that, the public hears and sees about NASA, we're the team behind that, trying to make that happen. So whether you're seeing, news about NASA on social media, or whenever, you read news about NASA on the news articles with some of our subject matter experts, we're the team trying to help organize and schedule those media interviews. We're also the team then that's in charge of doing the live coverage as well, to just bring, audiences closer to the amazing work that's happening at this agency.
And I think that's so important for people to realize that to work at NASA, you don't necessarily have to want to be an astronaut, right? There's so many integral teams to make sure that all of these gets shared with the world. And thanks to people like you, we actually, all of us get to feel involved with these incredible like next steps in humanity, right? Like all of the work that we're doing with space exploration. And what is communication like within NASA? You work in the communications field. Are there any specific challenges that you have faced in your career so far?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I do want to reiterate what you said. For sure, there are so many different types of jobs here at NASA. You don't just have to be an astronaut to work here. There are so many cool, interesting jobs that, really from any type of background, you could go and study anything and you can still have an opportunity to work here and do amazing things. In terms of the communications field, like with any job, of course, there are always challenges because, especially with communication, communication never sleeps, and we are, constantly trying to share, our message. And so I would say maybe, a big challenge that we face is just, I guess, timeliness and making sure that we are sending the message out there, as soon as we can, but also we want to make sure that we're being accurate. And so that's a challenge that you're going to see just in a communications job, no matter what, anywhere. But it applies also here at NASA, that's also, a challenge and everything. But it's a fun challenge. It's a good one, and with NASA, it's always, it's obviously space focused, so it can be very technical. I'm not an engineer or a rocket scientist or anything. So trying to also help convey the critical and super important work that our engineers, our scientists are doing here in a way that also the general public can understand is challenging, but it's also really rewarding because when you can, help explain, or you're, helping our experts also explain to, external audiences of what they're doing and why they should care and why it matters. It's really gratifying when you see kind of, the general audience, other people like open up their eyes and they're like, wow, like you never would have thought. So that's always really, really fun.
Can you tell us a bit more? What does this look like with the Artemis mission, for example? What has your work been specifically for this one mission?
So for Artemis, I mean, as you mentioned, it is definitely one of NASA's biggest, most important missions. I mean, we are returning humans to the moon. We're going to send the first woman to the moon, the first person of color. It is awesome. It requires obviously a lot of work. So there are so many different components within communications to help share the Artemis message. I mean, we're not just talking about the messaging that you're seeing on social media or the broadcasts. There are then media events, when we're bringing the media out to Kennedy Space Center to see our rocket, whether it's at the launch pad or it's inside the vehicle assembly building. There's the media interviews where we're scheduling with the media with so many of our subject matter experts, but also we have this huge outreach and STEM engagement. So you have the guest operations teams that is going, to different schools and helping give presentations and explanations on what Artemis is. And so a lot of our experts are also, giving those presentations, going to schools. We're reaching out to other, communities that maybe don't know what Artemis even is and helping, continue to share that message. There are also just so many other platforms that we're trying to reach. For instance, we were doing a whole kind of like arts week with connecting the arts with Artemis. So it was submit your drawings that are related to the moon, or if you have like a moon snap, like share it and everything. And then we were engaging with those audiences. Same with like space music. If you have any space inspired music, send over. So it's essentially trying to continue to share that message in also non-traditional formats. And so I, specialize, especially here at Kennedy, with working then, to share the work that is happening here at Kennedy to launch our Artemis missions.
No, that's super exciting to hear. And what would you recommend people that that want to become more acquainted with space study and the topic of all of these artistic and communication components that are involved?
So I would say, the first thing is, follow us obviously on the social media platforms so that you know that you're up to date with what is happening, here at NASA. What are we doing and how to then also get engaged? I mean, for all of our launches, for all of our missions, whether you have the opportunity to come to see those launches in person, you also have the opportunity to virtually engage and be there, in a remote environment, which is still really exciting and amazing. I mean, for instance, everyone had to just be remote last week to see our DART impact, which was when we sent a spacecraft to crash into an asteroid so that we could deflect it and it could change its course, which was, amazing. And we did it and it was great. And we had great engagement. We did a broadcast and everything. And we had people from all around the world tuning in. So I would say that's the first thing, make sure to follow us on those social media channels to know, what is happening. But then the second thing, I mean, if you have an interest in space, also visit, NASA's visitor complexes. We have some at Kennedy Space Center, at Johnson Space Center, where you get to, learn more, be there in person, get an up close look at, the work that we have done in the past decades and everything, and the work that we're continuing to do. If you're still a student, join the space camps that are also around the world, give you that next opportunity to be more involved and engaged. And then of course, take also the space sciences classes, take the astronomy courses, join the clubs, just try to be just more involved. I would say is the big thing, because it helps you get that foot in the door.
Yeah, that's great advice. And I would love to open the floor now for students to submit their questions. And we actually already have a few. So from William Sepulveda, from the Escuela Superior Monserrate León de Icisarri, Boquerón, Puerto Rico. He is asking, what job opportunities are there available for Latinos in the aerospatial industry?
So that's a great question. And actually, you'll see, one of our speakers here, Lili, she's a Latina from Colombia. She went and studied engineering, and now she's working at NASA's Kennedy Space Center on our Artemis moon rocket. So my answer is there are so many opportunities for Hispanics to get a door in the aerospace industry and work here. I mean, aside from whether it is working here at NASA and doing either, engineering, if that's what your heart desires, or something in sciences, or communications like me, there are also so many other commercial space companies that are emerging and growing, and they are, building we are seeing Hispanic involvement continue to grow in all of these places, especially also here at NASA. I mean, at Kennedy, we have a lot of Latinos, many of who I have the privilege to work with and get to see the amazing work that they do. And so definitely, don't feel like just because you're Latino or Hispanic, or, you're from another, area that doesn't have a NASA center maybe in that state or in that country, that you can't also find your footing or find a place here, because there is definitely a place here for everyone.
That's a beautiful thing to remember. We have another question from Colegio Discípulos de Cristo de Hato, Texas, Bayamón, Puerto Rico. The students want to know what are the different studies that are taking place in regards to climate change, and what is the importance of math in space?
So math is very important, for sure. I mean, if you want to be an astronaut, for instance, you need to have a master's degree in a STEM field. So that means science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. Math was never my favorite thing, but I do think, if it's yours, that is definitely crucial and important to have. And it is very, very important in NASA, especially if you are, in a science or STEM field. If you're trying to be in communications, or in another area, with our multimedia team, then having a strong, English or writing skill set is definitely very important. But I would say that all of the critical subjects that you learn in school, make sure to, pay attention and work hard, and, try your best. If you have a passion for it, don't let it go. And as far as for climate change, I mean, climate studies is really, really important also for NASA. Actually, the work that our astronauts do in the International Space Station, a lot of it actually is to help study and monitor, our climate down here on Earth. In fact, we work very closely with NOAA and with other programs that help study and monitor, our Earth sciences, our climate down here on Earth, climate change. For Hurricane Ian that just passed over Florida, it was also thanks a lot to the technology that's up in space in the International Space Station that was able to also look at the conditions from above on how, the hurricane was forming, its trajectory, and where it was going, and so forth. And in fact, every time when we send also new missions to the International Space Station, new science investigations, a lot of them are climate focused. And in fact, one of our NASA centers, Goddard Space Flight Center, which is based in Maryland, they also focus a lot on Earth sciences. So there are many, many opportunities.
Thank you so much, Tony, for that beautiful and packed information for all of our students. Could you please stay with us? It's time to bring in our second guest, who is also from Colombia, Liliana Villarreal. She told us a story that one visit to the Kennedy Space Center visitor complex in NASA changed her life and motivated her to work in spatial exploration. But one thing is to dream about it, and another thing is to actually go and do it. Today, she is the mission operations leader for the program of terrestrial systems of exploration. Her team brings support to human flight missions like Orion and the system of space launch, like Artemis. Welcome, Lili. It's such a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It's such an honor.
Thank you for being willing to share with all of our students, who I'm sure are super excited to talk to you. And what made you decide to work in science, and what did you study?
Well, like you spoke earlier, I went to the Kennedy Space Center Visitor Center and got to learn all about space and the history about space, which is something I didn't know. I was 7 years old, and I just fell in love with everything that they did and why we went to the moon. And I just wanted to be an astronaut from that moment forward. And I didn't know how I was going to be an astronaut, how I could become an astronaut, but I knew that I wanted it really, really bad. So, and tell the story a lot, but back then we didn't have Google. I couldn't research, well, how do you become an astronaut? We had encyclopedias. So I looked up all the astronauts that were currently on active duty, and most of them were engineers. And so I said, well, for me to become an astronaut, I need to be an engineer. So I was just adamant that I was going to become an engineer, and mostly aerospace engineering. And I really knew that for me to become an engineer, I had to be really good in the math and science areas. And I'll tell you, I really struggled with that. I wasn't like the best student. It didn't come to me very easy, but I worked it until I finally got it. And so I just want to tell you that you don't have to be perfect at math and science. You just have to have a love for it. And so I studied really hard, and was really happy that I got accepted to Georgia Tech. And just, I moved from Columbia to the United States when I was 10. So I did my high school time in Miami. And then I was accepted to Georgia Tech, which I really loved, and studied aerospace engineering. I never thought I would work for NASA. I just knew that I needed to start to become an engineer. And I was really lucky to have gotten a job with Boeing commercial aircrafts in Seattle. And then realized that Boeing had work with NASA in Florida. And so I just kept applying and applying for jobs there, and eventually got selected to work for Boeing. And I worked over 15 years on an international space station, some of the best time I've ever had. Getting to build the space station. I was really proud of that.
Wow.
And then I was asked to come and go from Boeing and work officially as a NASA civil servant. And I started working about 2007, and kind of dating myself. And I've been actually on this program for the past 7-8 years, the Artemis program, with this the Exploration Ground Systems program that I work in. And it has been such a great career. And the past couple of years building this rocket has just been amazing. So here I am.
So
Very
excited to
lucky.
hear. So exciting to hear all your path, and really encouraging as well. Not everybody feels comfortable with the, heavy math or engineering. I know that was the case for me as well. So that's really exciting. And tell us, what is a typical work day like for you? How do the different operations work?
Yeah, one of the things I love about my job is every day is completely different. We come in and we really wanting to find out, because we work in operations. Our job is to ensure that we are getting this rocket ready to go back to the pad and launch. So we need to make sure that we're meeting our schedules, meeting our milestones. So the first thing we do is, in the morning, we all literally as soon as I get up, I am checking to see what work happened at night, because we're working around the clock. What work happened at night? What were the issues that we had? What do we got to do to go resolve them? And then we have several meetings to discuss the work from the night before, the work that we're going to do today, and then we have other meetings to look ahead for what are we going to do for the next 11 days. We also in those meetings quickly figure out what are the problems that we have to resolve. Do we go meet with our chief engineers to come up with some solutions? Do we do creative schedule rearrangement to get us to meet our milestones? It's really fast paced, and it's a lot of information, and you really got to be constantly in communication with your team. So like I said, every day is completely different.
That's exciting to hear. And please tell us more about how does NASA select astronauts who spend long times at the International Space Station? Because we understand they need to be in space for months, and they need to be prepared mentally and physically, emotionally for long isolation periods too. Can you tell us more about that, please?
Yeah. Yeah, I will tell you that I applied to be an astronaut 4 times and never got through it, and I'm perfectly okay now with that. But the selection process is very, very hard. I mean, I am just in awe of all the people that apply and their qualifications, and then I keep thinking, oh my God, this person for sure is going to be an astronaut, and they were not selected. So the people who NASA
Wow.
selects in the end are just incredible people. They come from all different backgrounds. Not necessarily do they have to be pilots. Not necessarily do they have to be engineers. You know, we have some medical people. We have geologists. It all depends on what the future missions are that NASA's goals are for. Because these astronauts take a long time to train, you know, they're not going to be ready to go in space for a few years. So they're looking ahead as to what their needs are and the skill bases that they need. So I would think for deep exploration, we'd be looking definitely for sure in the first few flights. We want people who have a lot of experience with test flights. So we'd be looking most likely for military people, along with the people who are going to help us explore these new the moon and then eventually Mars. So we would be looking for geologists, biologists, and definitely physicians. We have several physician astronauts, and we also have educator astronauts, believe it or not. So it's
Wow.
definitely depends on what NASA is looking for.
So you would say that the requirements really get adapted depending on the mission and that they may change?
Yes, they could change. And so, we've been looking for ISS astronauts who can be in space for long terms and then who can help us perform a lot of science. And so I think for the Artemis one, we're now looking for people who are going to be, who have experience living on the space station and who are going to be going to the moon and who have a lot of testing experience. So.
Interesting. Yeah, that's super fascinating to learn. And can you tell us more about what does sustainability in space mean? We're hearing that concept more often now. And what is NASA doing in
Yeah.
regards to this specific concept?
So to me, sustainability in space means how can we learn to figure out how to stay in space after we get there, how to live in space, and that's really what the whole Artemis program is about. It's the basis and the foundation for us to get to the moon, but then along with the Artemis program, we have the human lander, we have the Gateway space station kind of device, and then we're looking at future. How do we have ground living quarters for teams on the moon? And this is all to help us figure out how to live in deep space, because eventually we want to go to Mars. So sustainability in space is how can we keep constant presence of humans in deep space? How do we bring them supplies? How do we get them back and forth? How do we ensure that they have proper living capabilities and they're safe? So that is the huge kind of response to what Artemis is all about. Artemis is not just the SLS vehicle. That is our way to this. It's the foundations. How do we get our astronauts to deep space? And then eventually we're going to build our ability to live in space.
That's fascinating and also really exciting to think about these things for the future, right? So what would you say to someone that may say, well, we already went to the moon, so what's the point in going again?
Mm-hmm. We get asked that a lot, and I just go back to history. What if we, humanity, didn't go back after we found, the Western world, or we didn't go up that mountain that we thought was never, climbable, and we didn't see what was on the other side? It's the human curiosity, and also a little bit of humanity ability to continue to live and find new resources and allow for population growth. So I think it's extremely important not just going back to the moon, but continuing the deep exploration.
I love that concept of deep exploration because that really goes beyond, right? And would you say, like, what would you say is Mars so important for the space program and this concept of deep exploration?
Yeah. Well, Mars is our nearest planet that we can visit that to us seems to have the capability for us to be able to eventually get there and live there, because it's got some of the properties that we can, with today's technology, figure out a way to live there. It's the ride there and how to get everything there that we really have to go prove. And the nearest place to go prove that is really the moon. That's why the moon is so important. So Mars is definitely in our horizon. I hope that I'm still working here in NASA when we go to Mars. But I'm not getting any younger, but I'm so excited to be part of the return to the moon.
It's so exciting. I thank people that do the work that you do, because it's really helping humanity move forward. And for the students that are listening to us out there today, what are space related careers that, in your opinion, are currently landing more jobs in the workforce?
It's really an exciting time right now in the aerospace industry. We have so many commercial companies, entities that are just coming up, and they are looking for every kind of engineer, and not just engineers. I mean, you will always need people who are really good in budgets, in program management, in logistics. But from an engineering perspective, I think the biggest fields that everybody's looking is computer science, software development, definitely aerospace, mechanical, industrial. I think you will be very well balanced if you really want to be an engineer, to get any of the engineering degrees really have the same foundation. So I think you'll be good to come and work in the aerospace industry with an engineering degree.
Okay, that's exciting. So students can kind of like have an idea that there's really not one direct path, but there's multiple entries to be in space exploration. And how, in your opinion, can we stimulate the next generation to get off the screen and look up to the sky and really dream about working for the future?
Well, I really was raised in a time of it was up post Apollo, obviously, and the shuttle had just started to launch, and I was in sixth grade when the Challenger accident happened, and unfortunately, that was a horrible thing for NASA, but it really got me to understand the importance of continuing to go back and do what we did after we returned to flight, but. I grew up watching Star Trek, and I just always believed in our ability to eventually go and do deep exploration and be eventually multiple of hundreds of years later, be a Star Trek kind of entity where we find other planets. But I think the number one thing we're gonna definitely get everybody excited about is this return to the moon. What Apollo did for all those people who grew up in Apollo, they all wanted to be part of it. All the young kids who saw us landing on the moon became really just exploded the engineering side of things and our technology side of things. I think we're going to do that again with art. I'm really excited to be part of that. And if when people see that rocket launch, it's going to really open up the minds of a lot of young children to say, "What was that? How do I work in that?" And I want to be part of that. So I'm really excited about our rocket doing that aspect of the mission.
That is so true, and it's because everybody's really going to be tuned to the internet and the TV when the launch happens, and that's really maybe the spark that some people need, right?
Yeah.
The last question that we have for you for now is, can you tell us more about Blue Origin, Virgin Galactic, and these other companies that are facilitating commercial flights so that your day-to-day person, your everyday person, not necessarily an astronaut, can go to space?
Yeah. Oh, I think it's great. And not only are they doing the opening it up for everyday people to go and do space, they're also helping us on the NASA side by being some of our partners to provide. For example, SpaceX is going to be providing the human lander. But I tell you what, I am really really excited about Blue Origin. I want to eventually have enough money to ride on a Blue Origin.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, I will totally do it if I could. And I think eventually it's going to be more accessible and I might be able to afford it one day, but I think it's great.
That's very exciting. And I agree with you. I think hopefully, the prices over time are going to be even more accessible so we can all dream about going to space. Thank you so much, Lili. Can you please hold and stay with us for a while longer? And we'll go into our next guest. Meanwhile, the Artemis mission tries to know if humans can make and set life on Mars. There's other people that try to look for life in more remote places than that. With that, I want to welcome Paula do Vale Pereira, who was born in Brazil, and her passion is aerospatial engineering. She has worked for NASA and MIT, and she is today an assistant professor at Florida Institute of Technology. Paula, welcome, and thank you so much for making time to be with us today.
Yes, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure to be here.
We are so excited to talk to you, and we would like to know, was there a specific thing in your life or event that motivated you to go into this field?
So that's a funny question. I think that I didn't have one specific thing, one specific event that made me love stars or love what is out there, but there was one specific thing that made me be able to do that. So as you mentioned, I was born and raised in Brazil, and I did my undergrad in mechanical engineering in Brazil and a master's in mechanical engineering in Brazil. And when I was there, I loved space for many years, but I never really thought that I would be able to work on something that would go to space. And then I applied for grad school here in the United States, and I came to MIT, and I did a master's in here and a Ph.D., both of them in space systems engineering. And when I was finally in here, I was, oh my God, there's so much like space things that happen around here, and there is so much that I can actually put my hands on and actually build and go and do and explore. And for me, that like coming to the US and opening all those doors was what turned the kind of the dream into a reality. And so I don't have a moment that made me love it, but I do have a moment that turned that into a reality.
Yeah, it's more like a whole path, right? And your own experience into it. How would you explain to someone who may not be familiarized with the complex and difficult terms, what is it that you do?
Okay, so I work with two main topics. One of them is spacecraft engineering, and the other one is probes for the exploration of ocean worlds. So let's start with spacecraft. Spacecraft is, I have one simple spacecraft on the back here. And a spacecraft is basically one system that you design, you build, and you have a lot of items inside that accomplish different functions. And after it's all put together, you send it to space, and it performs a certain mission or a certain task in space. So this is a spacecraft, and there are a lot of people that have to work together to be able to design and build the spacecraft, send it to space, and operate it. And what I like to do is working on small spacecraft like this one and design the systems that go inside it and then operate it after it's in space. And the other thing that I like to do is creating probes and modeling probes for the exploration of ocean worlds. And ocean worlds are worlds like planets or moons that have a lot of liquid water inside them. Just like the Earth has a lot of liquid water, we have a lot of oceans, there are other places in our solar system who also have a lot of liquid water. So there is, for example, Europa, which is one of the moons of Jupiter, or Enceladus, which is one of the moons of Saturn, that based on the spacecraft that passed by there and did some measurements, we do believe they have a lot of liquid water in there. And so these probes that I'm helping develop will somehow go from the surface to that water inside the planet and take a sample and see if there is like, oh, is there any carbon in here? Is there any tiny bacteria in here? Or I don't know, it could be something bigger, like a multicellular being, something kind of like a fish or something, and we could find that we are not alone in the solar system, and there is some other living companion right close to us.
That's so exciting to think about. So, on that topic, do you think there's life in other planets, and what kind of life do you think that would be like?
So that's a tough question. There is a lot of researchers trying to find life, and there is a lot of research happening in that topic. Personally, my personal perspective is that there are so many stars, so many planets, so many moons in the universe that the chance for only on the planet Earth for everything to have developed, I think that the chance for that to be that unique is relatively low. So I do think that somewhere out there, there is another moon, another planet that has had some life development. The level of development in that life, then is a different question. There might be just tiny bacteria or things that look more like viruses, but there might also be multicellular organisms. There might be bigger things that look like animals or even look like people, and we are looking forward to find someday some of those and see if we are alone or not.
And in your opinion, what are the conditions that need to happen so that there could be life on these other planets? And how can we prove their existence?
Okay, so there are 4 key things for life to happen, or as we know, because we just know our one simple point, which is how life developed here on Earth. So if there is a different way of life development, then all our baseline is not applicable. But based on what we know, there are 4 key ingredients for life to happen. The first of them is energy. So we need energy, just like humans need to eat, we need food. Every animal on Earth needs food. We all need energy to be able to develop life. The next one is to have the basic chemistry elements. So something like carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, and nitrogen are organic compounds that are necessary for life to happen. The third one is liquid water. Everything that we know here on Earth, for life to develop, there was a need to have liquid water involved. And the fourth and last topic is time. So if you have energy, chemistry, and water, you could develop life, but it takes time for all that to happen. It takes a lot of time for the molecules to get together and for the energy to start turning that into an organism and to turn that into a single cell living organism. And so you need to have the time in there as well, not only the physical ingredients.
Yeah, that's so exciting to think about the type of things that you guys are exploring, right? And with your work. Can you tell us more about what the CubeSat satellites are and what their importance is for different research?
Yes. Okay, so this satellite that I showed you guys is a simplified copy of a CubeSat. So a CubeSat is a satellite that is based on a cube shape. So 1 cube for this CubeSat is a 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters by 10 centimeters cube. And this one, as you can see in here, it's 10 by 10 by 30. So it's equivalent of having 3 cubes of a CubeSat in this spacecraft. So we call it a 3-unit or 3U CubeSat. And the beauty of CubeSats, from my perspective, is that they are first small and light, and the smaller something is, the cheaper it is to send it to space. The second special thing about CubeSats is that they are relatively standardized. So if you know that something is going to be 10 by 10, you can develop a certain component that can be used by many different people in many different satellites. And by producing many copies of that something, you can make that in a relatively lower cost. And the third thing that makes spacecraft like the CubeSats so special in my perspective is that given that they are relatively low cost, there is a higher acceptance for risk. So if there is a spacecraft that didn't cost that much and it doesn't work, it's not that bad as if something that was so important and so big and so expensive doesn't work. So this makes it possible for universities and even high schools to develop CubeSats, because then people are learning, and every time we're learning something, we are learning how to do something. We are not going to be masters at it the first time that we do it. So it's great for students to be able to make a satellite and send it to space, and everyone, of course, does their best for it to work. But if it ends up not working, it's not that bad. It's still okay. The learning experience was the key, and I think that those are the very important characteristics of CubeSats. And relatively to what they do, there are a lot of applications for CubeSats. There are CubeSats that look down at the Earth and take images of the surface of the Earth or of the clouds. There are some CubeSats that were tracking Hurricane Ian last week, and there are some pictures that CubeSats took that are like amazing. There are also CubeSats that look outside. So instead of looking down at the Earth, they look at stars or other planets, and they also do amazing science looking at those. There are CubeSats that do communications, so they try to do some laser communication in between them, or help communications with other missions like DART, that Antonia mentioned, that impacted an asteroid last week. There was one tiny CubeSat that was flying together with DART and was taking pictures of the impact, and then sent those pictures back to Earth, and we could understand what was happening better. So CubeSats can do a lot of different things, and they really open the space to a lot of different players and universities and even high schools and smaller institutions.
That's exciting to think about, that a small machine, right, has so much potential. What would you say scares you the most in respect to the future of the universe or our planets?
There is a big time component in that question, because I think that the sun, that is our main source of energy, will someday not have enough energy to keep burning anymore. So it will fade and it will no longer be there. But it will happen in millions of years from today. So I'm personally don't think that humans should be worrying about something that is so far ahead, because we don't really know how long any species is going to last. So I think that what worries me the most on space is not things from the outside, like stars or asteroids. I think what worries me the most is how humans put things in space, and how could we make it better, and how could we make it more sustainable, and could make it in a way that will not create any harm and will not make any bad for other planets or for our Earth.
Interesting. And the last question we have for you before we invite everyone back on stage is, for somebody that is interested in science but maybe hesitating whether to go into it or not, is it sustainable for one's life to be dedicated to science? And how big is the workforce available right now?
Oh, the topic for space exploration is huge right now. So there is a lot of people that can come and do science and work in aerospace. If you want to do an undergrad in the science and become a science major or an engineering major, you will definitely find a job in industry in those topics. There is a lot of companies that are doing space exploration. They are sending things to space. There are new rockets, and there are new human capsules like the SpaceX or the Boeing or Blue Origin. And there is also the NASA and other organizations that are funded by other things like the government, and they also have a lot of things going on. So there is definitely a lot of opportunity if people want to go into science and go into engineering. There is a lot of things that they can do with that engineering or science passion.
Thank you so much for sharing all your knowledge with us today. And I would like to please invite our other two guests to join us, and like me and Paula, so that we can go into another round of final questions by our students for all of you. And the first question I would like to ask, and please feel free to answer in whatever order or skip the question as well. How do you bring your Hispanic background to your work? Does anybody want to start? Please feel free.
I can start. I don't know about you guys, but I feel like we Hispanics are so passionate, and I bring that passion to work 100%. And it has definitely helped me in my career. I think if you love something, you will do everything you can to make it happen. So, passion is a very good thing that we bring as a culture.
Yeah,
Does
I would
anybody
like
want
to
to
add
answer?
that besides the
Please go ahead.
passion, there is also a lot of resilience and a lot of like try again and try again and try again. And sometimes that's what you need to be able to have a good career in space, because things might not work the first time, but you need to keep trying to make them work the second or the third time or the fourth time even. So this resiliency that we bring is very important.
Agree.
Tony, do you want to answer the question as well?
Well, Lili and Paula, they answered it perfectly. Like Lili, I am also, I know, very passionate. My whole team, I mean, they call me sometimes like a little feisty and everything, because I think that's just what Latinas and Latinos also kind of just bring to the table. We have that passion, that excitement. I mean, we talk a lot with our hands, and but that's great because it also shows the enthusiasm I think that we have, you know, that passion that Lili was mentioning, that resilience that Paula was mentioning. You know, we don't want to give up until we feel satisfied and we are, you know, happy with the job that we've done. And I think that also can be very contagious for other team members. You know, when you're passionate and excited about something, when you will not give up, that inspires others to also not give up, to also keep on trying and persevering. So I think it's really, really great to kind of bring all of that, you know, Latin blood that we have and everything to the table. You know, don't shy away from who you are.
I love that advice and so true. Now that you guys get to work in your dream projects, what would be your next goals for the future?
Hmm.
Well, personally, I'll go. I mean, getting to work on Artemis, getting to share Artemis's story, that's, you know, that's already a dream come true. Like, I definitely feel like we are part of one of the most coolest missions, and I can't wait, you know, after Artemis 1 to then go on to Artemis 2, when we are going to finally put, you know, astronauts inside the Orion spacecraft, and then Artemis 3 when we will actually be landing on the moon. So getting to see kind of the Artemis evolution is really, really exciting. You know, I think after that, I think the next big thing is for sure then to continue humanity's exploration in the universe. And so if I'm able to also be a part of that, that would be an amazing goal.
Yeah, I agree. I think seeing the first woman land on the moon is the thing I'm most excited about.
Yeah, I would add to that and say that looking at people and having people going even further out than the moon and having people going to Mars or even to Europa or Enceladus would be things that would be very exciting, and I would be really looking forward to.
Thank you guys for sharing. The last question that we have for all of you is, what is your best advice for young students out there that may be considering careers in STEM? Can we start with you, Lili, please?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question? I couldn't hear.
Yeah. What is your best advice for young students out there that may be considering a career in STEM?
I think the best advice is if you're definitely take as many STEM classes as you can. I will be the one to say that I took extra math classes just to make sure that I had a good overview of the math area. And eventually learned to love math. And even though at the beginning I didn't think I was really good at it, but take those when you got electives to go choose, maybe look at taking electives that are in the STEM area. Don't not necessarily doesn't they don't have to be non-STEM areas too. And believe it or not, taking another language is extremely helpful too, in the STEM field, because it really opens up, since there's something about the brain and learning a different language, and most of us are bilingual, but I took French, and for some reason that really helped me with the STEM classes, believe it or not.
Can we have you, Paula, go next, please?
Yes. So I see two things that I think are important for students that are thinking on following STEM. The first one of them is to be hungry. There is a lot of different videos on YouTube and a lot of different web pages and NASA blog posts and etc. on super accessible on your computer or even on your cell phone, and you can go in there and read so much and learn so much about space and about STEM and about engineering. So be hungry and go for those things and learn as much as you can outside the classroom and outside the things that you have to do for school, for example. And the second thing that I would like to add is to also understand what you have going against you and make sure that you study that as much as you can so you can withstand that and potentially even excel over that. So, for example, I was from another country. So for me, immigration issues were very important because there is a lot of hardships in coming to the US and working in the space industry if you are from a different country. So one thing that for me was key is to really understand what it means to be an immigrant and understand all the potential pathways and read a lot about all different types of visas and all different types of legal work and what you can do and what you cannot do, and definitely understand all those limitations very well so you can go and do the right thing, and when you're ready, go take the next step and use that in your favor.
Antonia, you want to say one last few words before we have to wrap up?
Sure. So I'm not in a STEM field, but nevertheless, I think whether it's in STEM or in anything else, I think a good thing to always remember is, don't give up. I think trying to continue trying, even, if, well, not even when challenges pop up, because they to remember, why you're doing this and realize that it's gonna take a lot of work to accomplish, but that's okay, because that's part of the journey. And on that note, and I think this applies especially for the STEM field and for the aerospace industry, is to not be afraid to fail, because sometimes failing is part of that learning experience and is actually what helps you then continue and finally get it right. When NASA first started in this, in the late 50s, early 60s, I mean, we failed a lot, but that was good. We were excited about that when we launched our first rockets, and they weren't successful. The engineers were actually very, very happy about that, because they were like, all right, what did we learn from that, and how now can we apply that for then the next time when we try again, until they got it right. And they did, and we have seen all of the amazing things that this agency has done. So just because it doesn't work the first time, the second, or the 10th, doesn't mean it won't. You just have to continue to persevere.
Thank you so much to the three of you for making the time to talk to us today and for sharing all your incredible knowledge and experience. It's been such an honor and a pleasure. And that's it for us today. We've had three very special guests with us, each of them with a different background and different specialties, but they all share something in common, which is their love for science and their curiosity to know what's beyond life in our planet. We want to thank the three of them for sharing all of their knowledge with us, and for all of you who are out there following us on YouTube and Facebook, for all your questions and for being so interested and curious with this webinar, which is so important for us that you were here with us today. Tomorrow we'll have another webinar, so do not miss out. It's going to be at the same time, 10 a.m. Eastern time, with two very special guests, Thomas Ahumada, who is a fifth-year astronomy Ph.D. candidate at the University of Maryland, as well as research assistant at NASA Goddard Space Flight Center, and Luis Henry Quiroga, who is an astrophysics professor at Florida Tech and has so much incredible knowledge to share with all of you. A special thank you to NASA Español for facilitating access to the library with images during this webinar, and I want to invite all of you to please check us out at hitn.tv/spaceweek and to be tuned to all of the events that are happening in HITN during World Space Week. Thank you so much for joining us today, and see you tomorrow.